Everyone at the graduation ceremony was clapping, parents cheering, students crying, cameras flashing. But in the very back row, far from the decorated stage, one man stood alone in a faded janitor's uniform, still smelling faintly of bleach from the morning shift. His eyes shimmered with pride as his twin daughters walked across the stage in their caps and gowns. Then a USMC Captain, crisp uniform, polished boots, ribbons gleaming, froze mid-stride. Because he'd just seen the single dad's tattoo, a battered, old military ink half hidden beneath the sleeve of a cheap work shirt. The captain stopped, stared, and whispered, "Sir, where did you get that?" That moment would change everything the single father believed about sacrifice, honor, and what he truly deserved. Ethan Cole had long ago learned how to move through life without drawing attention. It wasn't that people ignored him on purpose, he simply blended into the background so effortlessly that most never realized he was there at all. His faded blue janitor's uniform didn't help. The fabric was worn thin at the elbows and knees, the name patch half unstitched after years of washing machines that rattled louder than the school bell. But Ethan didn't mind. He wasn't here to be noticed. He was here to keep things clean, to keep things working, and more importantly, to keep his promise. Every morning, long before dawn even hinted at the horizon, Ethan pushed his squeaky cleaning cart into the halls of Jefferson High School. The wheels complained with every turn, a sound that used to irritate him but had, over time, become oddly comforting. It meant a routine. It meant stability. And after everything he'd lost, stability was sacred. The hallways were silent at that hour, lit only by the dim emergency lights and the glow of Ethan's old handheld lantern. He preferred it that way. It gave him time to think. Or rather, to not think. To focus on motions he could control, wringing out the mop, wiping down lockers, emptying overflowing trash bins stuffed with crumpled homework and half-finished lunch wrappers. The world made sense when he worked. There was a rhythm to it. A pattern. Clean, move, repeat. Simple. Predictable. But no matter how predictable his mornings were, his thoughts always circled back to the same two people, his twin daughters, Ava and Lily. They were 17 now, graduating that very afternoon. The thought alone almost stopped his breath. He remembered them as toddlers, standing wobbly on socked feet, clinging to his pant leg after their mother passed. They hadn't fully understood what loss meant back then. But Ethan had. He'd felt the crushing weight of it every day since leaving the Marine Corps after the accident had felt like losing another family, another identity. When the world fell silent after his wife's funeral, the only voices that brought him back were the small, uncertain ones asking, "Daddy, are you okay?" He wasn't, not really. But he became okay for them. Every scraped knee, every bout of flu, every school project that required last-minute poster board he could barely afford, Ethan pushed through it. He learned to braid hair, learned how to cook meals with whatever was on sale, learned how to listen when his daughters talked about things he didn't fully understand. He learned to be both mother and father, comfort and discipline, provider and protector. That's why he never complained about his job. It was steady. It kept a roof overhead, food on the table, and shoes on the girls' feet. Even when his hands cracked from cleaning chemicals or when his back throbbed from lifting too many chairs, he reminded himself, this was how he kept his family safe. This was how he honored the woman he'd lost. The tattoo on his left arm, the old Marine unit insignia, was the only thing left from a different life. A life where he'd stood tall, commanded respect, and believed he had a future filled with purpose. Now it was mostly hidden beneath his uniform sleeve, faded like an old photograph left too long in the sun. He covered it not from shame, but from a sense that he no longer belonged to that world. He wasn't Captain Cole or Sergeant Cole. He was just Ethan. Just a janitor. When he finished setting up the last row of folding chairs in the auditorium for the graduation ceremony, he stepped back and looked around. Though his hands smelled of bleach and metal polish, the room sparkled. The stage banners were straight, the lights shone clean and bright, and the seats waited patiently for proud families. Ethan exhaled deeply, a mix of exhaustion and pride swelling inside him. "We made it, girls," he whispered into the empty room. He didn't know that before the day was over, someone else would see that faded tattoo. Someone who would remember the man he used to be, and change the course of his life in a way he never expected. Captain Marcus Hale moved through the buzzing crowd of graduation guests with the sharp posture of a man who'd lived most of his adult life in uniform. Even out of combat, he carried an unmistakable presence, chin high, steps measured, eyes always scanning. Today he wore his dress blues, medals aligned in perfect rows across his chest, each one representing a story, a battle, or a promise made and kept. He had come to Jefferson High as an honored guest, invited to give a speech about resilience and service. As he moved toward the stage, parents stopped him to shake his hand, students asked for pictures, and teachers beamed with pride. Hale smiled politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd given variations of this speech dozens of times. Yet every time he stood before young graduates, he remembered the faces of Marines who never made it home, men and women who never had the chance to walk across a stage or hear applause echoing through an auditorium. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something that made him falter mid-step. At first, he noticed only the faded blue of a janitor's uniform. A man stood alone near the back, hands clasped, shoulders slightly curved inward. Hale might have overlooked him like everyone else did, except for one detail. A tattoo. A very specific tattoo. The sleeve of the janitor's uniform had shifted as the man reached up to wipe his eye, revealing a symbol Hale hadn't seen in years. A mark belonging to a Marine unit known for its grueling deployments, its impossible missions, and the heartbreaking losses that had reshaped Hale's own career. Hale froze. Not in shock, no, it was deeper than that. It was recognition. He stepped closer, weaving through the crowd unnoticed, until he stood beside the man. "Sir," Hale said, voice steady but softer than usual. "Where did you serve?" The janitor turned, startled. Up close, Hale saw the exhaustion etched into his face, the tired eyes, the roughened hands, the tired yet humble stance. But beneath all that, something else flickered. Something familiar. "I don't. Anymore," the man replied quietly, tugging his sleeve back down. "That was a long time ago." Hale narrowed his eyes, studying him. "That insignia isn't something you forget. And you don't get it unless you've lived through hell." The man looked away. "I'm just a janitor now. Nothing special." Hale felt something ache inside his chest. How many times had he told his younger Marines that their identity wasn't defined by their rank? That their worth didn't vanish when the uniform came off? Apparently someone hadn't told this man. Or maybe he'd simply stopped believing it. Before Hale could respond, the principal called for silence as the graduation began. Students filed in, caps and gowns swaying, families cheering them on. Hale stood silently beside the janitor, sensing the man's tension. Then the names were called. Ava Cole. Lily Cole. Hale watched the man's face transform. His shoulders lifted, his eyes filled with tears he didn't bother hiding, and pride radiated from him in waves strong enough to fill the whole auditorium. He wasn't clapping loudly, but the emotion pouring from him spoke louder than anyone else's applause. Those must be his daughters. Suddenly, everything made sense, the tired hands, the quiet strength, the humility. Hale had seen that look before in the faces of Marines who fought not for glory, but for the people they loved. And he understood something else. This man wasn't just a janitor. He was a father who'd carried the weight of the world on his back so his daughters could rise higher. After the ceremony, Hale didn't hesitate. He sought out the principal, asked about the janitor, and learned the truth: a single father, widowed, working 2 shifts, never asking for anything, always giving everything. Hale felt a surge of respect so fierce it stunned him. He went back, found the man hugging his daughters, and stepped forward with purpose. "Sir, I'd be honored to take you and your daughters to lunch," Hale said. The man blinked, surprised. "Captain, you don't owe me anything." But Hale shook his head slowly. "You're wrong. This country owes you plenty. And I'm going to make sure you're not overlooked anymore." He didn't yet know just how deeply their stories were intertwined. But he would soon. The diner Hale chose wasn't fancy, just a quiet, homey place with red vinyl booths and the smell of fresh coffee hanging in the air. It was the kind of place that didn't judge people by their clothes or titles, something Ethan Cole appreciated more than he'd ever admit. Ava and Lily slid into the booth first, still glowing with excitement from their graduation, their matching smiles a perfect mirror of each other. Ethan sat beside them, hands folded, unsure why a decorated Marine captain was treating his family to lunch. Captain Hale took the opposite seat, removing his white gloves and resting them carefully beside his cap. His posture was perfect, but his eyes, steel blue and unwavering, held a softness Ethan didn't expect. "Mr. Cole," Hale began, "I need to ask something important. That tattoo, your unit. Were you deployed in Fallujah?" Ethan hesitated. The memories were old but far from forgotten. "Yes. Years ago." Hale drew in a breath, something shifting in his expression. "Then you served with Captain Jonathan Hale." Ethan's heart faltered. He knew that name. He remembered it with painful clarity. "Your father," Ethan whispered, understanding at last. Hale nodded, throat tightening. He spoke about his team every chance he got. About bravery. And about one Marine he trusted more than anyone. A man he said would give everything for his brothers. He said if he ever fell, he hoped that man would be there. Ethan's jaw tensed. The diner grew quieter in his ears. "I was there," he murmured. "But I couldn't save him." The guilt he had carried for over a decade slipped back onto his shoulders like a heavy, familiar coat. Hale leaned forward. "Mr. Cole. He died in your arms. I know. I read the after-action report. But you tried. You fought to bring him home. My father trusted you because he knew you were the kind of Marine who never left anyone behind." Ethan looked down at his rough hands, the same ones that had held a dying friend, the same ones that now scrubbed school floors. "That man doesn't exist anymore," he said quietly. "I'm just a janitor now." Ava reached for his hand. Lily grasped the other. They didn't fully understand the conversation, but they understood their father, understood how deeply he carried his burdens. Hale watched the three of them, the bond between father and daughter so strong and pure it tightened his chest. "You're more than you think," he said. "You raised two remarkable young women on your own. That takes strength most people never have to find." Ethan's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. Hale continued, his voice steady. "There are benefits you should have received years ago. Support you earned. Opportunity you deserve. I can help you get all of it." Ethan shook his head immediately. "I don't want special treatment." "This isn't special treatment," Hale replied. "This is justice." Those words hung in the air. Strong. Unshakable. Over the next weeks, Hale kept his promise. He walked Ethan through every form, every process he'd avoided out of shame or exhaustion. He met with the school board, advocating fiercely on Ethan's behalf. He spoke of leadership, duty, sacrifice. Not the kind shown in medals, but the kind shown in years of quiet perseverance. When the board scheduled a meeting to offer Ethan a supervisory position, he almost didn't go. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, wearing the cleanest shirt he owned, feeling like an imposter. "Dad," Ava said, stepping behind him. "You've earned this." "You've earned more than this," Lily added. Their words steadied him. At the meeting, when he was handed the official offer, better pay, better hours, responsibility worthy of his work, Ethan stared at the paper, stunned. His voice trembled as he said, I'm not sure I deserve this." Ava squeezed his shoulder. "You deserve everything, Dad." Lily nodded, eyes shining. "You gave up so much for us. It's your turn now." When they held a small celebration at the school, Hale stood to give a toast. Everyone gathered, teachers, staff, students who knew him only as the quiet man with the mop, now seeing the truth behind the uniform he no longer wore. Hale lifted his glass. "To Ethan Cole," he said, "a Marine, a father, a man who proves that real strength isn't about rank or medals. It's about love, sacrifice, and never giving up, even when no one is watching." Ethan felt the room blur around him as emotion swelled in his chest. For the first time in years, he lifted his head. He stood tall. He felt seen. Not as a janitor. Not as a man who'd lost everything. But as someone who had given everything, and finally received something back. Ethan walked forward not as a janitor, not as a forgotten soldier, but as a man finally seen. His daughters didn't rise because he had everything, they rose because he gave everything. And the world, at last, gave a little back. Moral: your worth is not measured by titles or uniforms, but by the love, sacrifice, and courage you show when no one is watching.